and welcome to Responsibly Independent. This is my first time doing this, so please bear with me. With me, I have Taylor Dickinson, and she's going to interview me regarding the 4 books that I wrote. Taylor?
Yeah, Tiffany, so will you tell me about what motivated you to start writing, what inspired you to become an author?
Yes. My original plan was to be an advocate for those with disabilities, an individual advocate for those with disabilities at the ARC. The ARC helps people with intellectual or developmental disabilities to become as independent as they can. And my books were supposed to be a tool for me to use at the ARC. One of my friends got me mixed up with the Department of Revenue, and then I had to start making money as an author, not as an advocate. So that's what got me into being an author. But these books are just supposed to be helpful, actually, for anybody to be as independent as they choose to be.
Yeah, and will you tell me a little bit about what has been some of your own experiences with individual advocacy?
I noticed that individual advocates are usually wanting to help everybody make good choices. I want people to make educated choices, even if they're not good. At least if they're educated, that's what matters to me the most.
Yeah, that's really great. And so tell me about your very first book. How was it? What was it like writing that? And did you run into any barriers? How did that go for you?
Oh yes, in fact, it took me about 16 years. I started writing in 1998, and I was just going through everything. What does somebody need to know to be independent? I never lived in assisted living for longer than a month at a time. And so that was in part why I started this. But a lot of people would say to me, I can't live on my own. I have seizures. I can't live on my own. Whatever somebody has told them. Maybe they can't handle their own money. They can't. Yeah, it's all about can't instead of can.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that. And can you also, what can I expect to find in the books? Could you give me a description of each book and what the purpose is of it and who it's designed for?
Yes. The book that took me that long to write is called A Journey to Independence. It was originally geared for people with intellectual developmental disabilities. And I had a few of my friends read it, and they go, if I had this information when I was younger, I would have made better choices. You ought to get this into the schools, like the high schools and things like that. And so I went ahead and did that, got it aimed for them. I changed the title for people who do not need all the extra definitions, because in A Journey to Independence, I have all these definitions for some of the simplest words, because some people, including those whose second language is English, they might need that also, because if they're like, well, what's that mean? What's against medical advice? What's fill in the blank for the word. So if I think that there might be a question about what a word means, including the word abortion, I don't give my personal views in this book, in any of my books actually, but I describe what those things are so that the reader can make an educated decision. If you're talking above their head, if they're reading above their head, that doesn't help anybody. And for your information, my website is responsiblyindependent.com. That's my website. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and contact me through email. And it's the same, responsiblyindependent@yahoo.com.
Great, thank you. And what was it like getting published? How was that for you, being self-published?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I started attending a group called Spokane Author Self-Publishers, and some of them were able to direct me to a place called Grey Dog Press, and they printed it for me. I think I'm my own publisher, but Grey Dog Press printed them for me.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I'm still struggling to get the revisions of my A Journey to Independence and Growing Independent. A Growing Independent is the workbook to A Journey into Independence. And Freedom Seeker and Freedom Seeking are the books for anybody who does not struggle with written English. I also have A Journey to Independence in audio format, and all 4 of them are available in ebook.
Mm-hmm. Great. And is there any advice you would give to individuals who are looking to publish their own book, or even just advice to someone who might have some barriers to that and, similar to what you've faced?
Yeah. First is find a writer's group, not just one that critiques, but one that can teach you maybe about marketing, about publishing. The group that I belong to, I have learned about taxes one year and all of the months. I mean, this is a monthly meeting. And so we've learned just about everything. I remember a lady gave us some forms and it said tasks, goals, completion. And I've used that for a while, but everything I was working on, I deal with many barriers. And one of the barriers is using the individual technology to complete things, and it's a nightmare for me. And so I have to break down my goal even further, and that makes me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Me and technology are not friends. In fact, when it says it's company policy to blame the computer, that's literally about correct for me.
Yeah. And so you have your own personal experience being in both the role of someone who is living and experiencing a disability and also caring for someone. So how do you feel that perspective, has helped you write your books?
Well, along with starting to write in 1998, I met my now husband and his son, and he adopted his grandson later on. And our son, his son, my stepson, I will further refer to as my son, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, was on a feeding tube, and could not use his hands at all. He was curled up like this, both sides, with his knees in his chest like this, on both knees. However, I still thought that Joshua could learn to be alone for 2 hours max at a time. That was my goal for him. I did not know what Joshua's interests were because he couldn't talk. I sometimes could understand what he wanted, not always. But to me, I thought that Joshua could do more if he wanted, but my husband said, if he gets hurt, I'll go to prison. And that was his big go-to for everything, because I had more grandiose plans. And finally one day, Eli said, Joshua doesn't like that. Joshua, and then I was okay with it, but to me, it's all about individual choice. And at least giving somebody the opportunity and to make the decision, even if their decision is different next time around. You know, maybe one day they say, I want a job. The next day they say, I don't. Well, that's not the day to go looking. And I struggle with people who even say they can't, because if they don't try, how are they going to know? My mom is a big one for that. My mom has multiple sclerosis. And until I finished 6th grade, my mom didn't work. My mom had MS that was in remission, with bouts of coming out of remission. And she might be out of remission for 2 weeks with double vision. Well, in 2002 sometime, my mom's MS progressed to secondary, I don't know the second word, it's consistently out of remission. But I still think that there's things that she can do, but she chooses not to do. And that, because it's my mom, that annoys me. That annoys me as much as my son not being able to make his own choices because he had a guardian. So that's part of it. I was the standby guardian for our son, Joshua. But I never went against my husband's wishes when it came to Joshua. I was supposed to do what he wanted me to do for Joshua when Eli wasn't available. And then, of course, my husband adopted his grandson, and so upon saying I do, I became a wife, a mom, and a grandma, all upon saying I do.
And so your books are all about making informed or educated choices. So how did you learn how to do that? What helped you navigate through this world, and what made you want to help others do that as well?
Well, it's kind of a negative thing, but I was always told I wanted to do everything that the non-disabled kids did. I wanted to drive. I went to college, never got my degree, but I've done some college. Had to change my degree 3 times, maybe twice. I think I had 3 different things I did. I wanted when I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher. By the time I graduated, you couldn't pay me to be a teacher in a school setting. I studied early childhood education and then music, and the reason I got out of early childhood education was because I physically could not get gloves on without using my teeth. And I was told, that endangers the kids. And you can probably imagine how well that went over with me, because my attitude has been the same. I switched into music. But you have to be able to play an instrument along with sing. Have you ever tried to play an instrument with one hand other than the trumpet? It does not work. You cannot play an instrument and sing. Or play the trumpet and sing. And I've always had limited use of my left side. But as much as it is now limited, that's because I had surgery and I lost the use of my lower left arm and my fine motor skills in my hand.
Yeah. So, would you say that how did you find ways to write your book and to, because did you type with one hand? How did you make accommodations for that?
I've always typed with one hand, because I only had, I could use this hand, but I could grab, but I couldn't type.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I wrote. I had a difficult time navigating the computer back then, but it wasn't as bad. And as much as I get away with, I wrote on I can't find the. It's a writing tablet instead of a iPad or Android kind of tablet. And then when I had enough things written in, I started typing. I started labeling my chapters. I would go through, what do I need to know to live by myself? So I wrote about riding the bus. I wrote about people that I had come into my home from agencies that could help me with my specific challenges. I wrote like a form of a resource chapter. And I have my state's information in there. And these kinds of agencies should probably be available in every state. I wrote about, I got things about boundaries, I've got things about smoking, e-smoking, or electronic smoking, drinking. The only thing that I did not ever give somebody an option over was illegal drugs. I said, this is what they can do for you, this is how they can harm you. And I put every possible side effect I saw in everything. I listed those. Actually, all you gotta do is watch a prescription drug commercial and you'll find all the side effects. It could affect anybody, anyway, anyhow. Yes, I also have a very unique sense of humor.
That's great. And tell me about a time where you've had to advocate for yourself. I know there's probably a lot.
After I'd already been eligible for caregiving services for a long time. Somehow, when I answered all the questions, caseworker looks at my file and she goes, "We got a problem. You're not eligible for services." Okay, that ain't happening. So I called an advocacy agency, which is it's Spokane Independent Living Center. It was Coalition of Responsible Disabled at the time. So I called them up and I go, "Help?" And so they helped me through it all. They helped me with like ways that I'd answered the questions wrong. Like I read too much into them or something, so I really couldn't do those things. But the way that I've adapted, I could. And so I said I could, when really I couldn't. And I got my services back. And that was very frightening to me. I didn't realize those kinds of things could happen. And at the time I was not married. I was still single. And there was no way that was happening. Now, if that happened, about the only problem I'd have is paying for my prescription medicines. I could probably afford my doctors and stuff, but not my prescriptions.
Yeah. And you're thinking about doing speeches as well.
Yes. I'm in Toastmasters, and my group is called Moonlighters. We meet every Thursday night in a hybrid meeting. So people can come live, or they can come to the meeting, or they can come onto a Zoom meeting. And at this point, I don't remember the meeting number off the top of my head. But if you are interested in learning how to speak, go ahead and shoot me an email, and I will probably be able to send you that information as soon as possible. Or I might be able to post it on Facebook in general. My other books, I said I was revising books. The books that do not have all the extra definitions in them are Freedom Seeker and Freedom Seeking. The way that I explain these is A Journey to Independence and Freedom Seeking, Freedom Seeker. A Journey to Independence and Freedom Seeker are autobiographical, inspirational books about me. And they talk about how I made decisions in my life. Whether that was dating, living independently, or in other living situations, having kids, things I will and will not accept from people. When I'm setting up when somebody's asking if they want to be my friend, what are my spatial boundaries, where I would and would not want somebody to touch me, hug me, kiss me, all kinds of spatial kinds of boundaries. How far do I want people to be away from me before I'm uncomfortable? That's one kind of boundary. Another kind of boundary is, I call them lifestyle choices. Do you have a religion? Do you have a political view? Do you even want to vote? In this era, this time in life, it's extremely important, in my opinion, to vote. Because if you don't and you lose your services or something goes haywire in your life, if you don't vote, then you're to blame. You're part of the problem, you're not part of the solution. And I have a friend who is in the military. She got Agent Orange. And now she laughs all the time when she's awake. She can't help it. And about 10 years ago, we would go shopping together, grocery shopping together sometimes. And it wouldn't bother me if we still did that, even though she's laughing all the time. That's the way I view. To me, people with disabilities are equally valid as people who don't. I'd rather be around somebody like Joshua or other people with significant disabilities than with somebody who can talk and be loud. I've got very sensitive ears, so for me, sound is really critical, or keeping sound at bay. No yelling, no being frustrated, that kind of stuff. Because if it gets too loud, I'm going to hide, or I'm going to run from the sound. Plug my ears, something. Anyways, back to my books. Some of the chapters talk about education. What do you want to achieve? What are you good at? What do you enjoy? And can any of those good at and enjoys be combined into one job? To me, I said I wanted to be a teacher earlier. To me, advocating and or teaching people with disabilities, we got a cell phone going. I'm back in the teaching. I love singing. And I like being in front of people. So sometimes I can do music, like in karaoke, things like that. And other times, I can just be a friend, an advocate, a helper. And I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the chapters of your books.
Right. So, I'm good at talking. I'm good at singing. I have my passion is for people with intellectual disabilities. How do I put that together? And that's one of the reasons I thought of advocacy, but when I realized how different my view of things is, how do I do this? And I realized most people with disabilities have had the choices made for them. They never get to make wrong choices, bad choices. And if they're never making their own choices, how in the world are they going to learn anything? And that's where, so I guess that's what makes my books and other things like that, my speeches, unique, is that I'm very much into finding out what people are good at. What do they enjoy? And then I go in, and then I have the individual write down what their limitations and other things are. Or if they need, if there's ways that they can work around, compromise, accommodate, then they can do that too. But to go ahead and tell me, for example, without being able to use his hand, get a special one-handed keyboard. Do I have the desire for that? No. Then why? You know, I mean, at one point I wanted to be a receptionist when I was being pushed into traditional jobs. But traditional work and me also do not get along. I might be able to be a YouTuber, but my interest level is so, or my creativity in that area is so low. I think more succinct, logical, and my ways of creativity are usually too far out of the box. So, so those are some examples. Did I ever want kids? And then you've got stepkids and blended families. We're not a blended family. I'm the step parent. All of the kids are my husband's. Would you consider raising your grandchildren? If they did, would you still do it if it was a closed or an open adoption? What about adoptions out of state or out of country? So this is how in depth the chapters in my book will get regarding relationships. What is important, what is not important, regarding, I wouldn't have to worry about, I did not, before I was married, I never wanted to worry about my boyfriend coming home from the military, my boyfriend coming home from being a police officer or security guard. So military, law enforcement, and security guards were not on my radar at all. So those are some examples. My husband and I have the same faith. Because of Joshua, we both have I don't know what the word is. We both like or work with or empathize with people who have disabilities. My husband's the caregiver. I'm like the social worker. Before Joshua turned 18, everything was IEPs and stuff in the before guardianship. I'm struggling for the words I'm looking for. And if you want to help me figure out that word.
Was when he was in school?
When he was in school, but when he turned 18, things had changed. Like he had to have a guardian. Or Eli would not have been able to make choices for him. Which I don't know if that was good, bad, or indifferent from my personal perspective. And keep in mind, my husband's legally blind, and so and he's head injured. So he has some of that experience also, where he finally one day, after he was living at home, after he was head injured, he said, "I'm gone, I'm leaving," and packed his bag, and finally his dad said, "Well, if you're gonna go, I'll drive you to the bus station." So his parents were still supportive, even if they didn't agree with what he was doing. My parents are learning that. I think they've learned a big portion of that. And I would also like to tell you I would like to let you guys know that I am going to continue to get better at this because I really don't know what I'm doing. But my books are very well thought out. I might have everything regarding finding out who you are, what your boundaries are, what your belief system is, to, okay, you've moved out. What services do you need? Do you need anything? Or what job did you get? Do you like what you do? If not, there's questions to figure that out and change if you want. And I go all the way through. And I think my final thing would be, I don't know if you guys remember who Terry Shiro is, but she was an insurance clerk at age 25 who went into cardiac arrest. She was resuscitated, but left with major brain damage, brain trauma. And then, after the doctors finally told her husband, there's nothing we can do for her. She's going to be like this for the rest of her life. Her husband went to do something, so basically euthanasia, pulling the plug. And the parents of her husband's in-laws kept going to court and circumventing that. Finally, after it went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, the husband won that battle. And this is like 7 years later, I think. I would not want my parents and my husband fighting over what happened to me if that ever happened to me. So I would basically put things in writing. Who would you want to be your substitute decision maker? And I've had to use that 4 times. I've been in the hospital, and sometimes I couldn't speak for myself. And so my husband would have to come in and say, do this, or the other thing. That is the way it should be done, so that things are at the least conflict level possible for everybody around me. I advocate because I've seen so many people be prevented from doing things they want to. And I'm all about setting things up in a way that everybody gets what they want for their so that you get to live the way you want to, instead of having somebody come in and say, he can't do that, she can't do that. That's wrong. Unless the person says, I want this person to make my decisions because I don't know enough about this to make a good choice, then that's okay. Otherwise, it's not. If you would like me to speak to one of your groups, at this time, I'm comfortable speaking to maximum 10 people face to face. I can do this, what I'm doing now, but it's not as good as it should be. And I struggle with speaking for a long amount of time anyways, so. Oh, Michelle.
Good.
So again, My company name is Responsibly Independent, and my slogan is gaining freedom, maintaining independence. I have 2 sets of books, A Journey to Independence and Growing Independent. And then my other set is Freedom Seeker and Freedom Seeking. Growing Independent and Freedom Seeking are the workbooks, and they can be companions to the other books, or you can get them you can buy all of them separately if you wanted to. But they are identical books. Both Freedom Seeking is identical to A Journey to Independence, except for A Journey to Independence has all the excessive definitions. Growing Independent has they have definitions when they need them. A Freedom Seeking doesn't have any of those excessive definitions. These are practical books from a spiritual slant. And I guess they can be slightly considered in the advocacy realm also. I'm very proactive. I'm very I lost my word. Do you have a copy of my book?
Oh, I actually don't on me.
Anyways, so I'm a resident of Washington State. We had 2 children that we raised. We have 3 or maybe 2 to 4 others children that are my age or older. Almost everybody in my family, my husband's parents and siblings, and let me tell you, my husband's parents, my parents, everybody except for my dad has had long-term disabilities. And I write from the perspective of the person who should be making the choices. And I also assist people who are the caregivers of the others, what questions that they should be asking the individual that they are taking care of. Like in the case of Joshua and my husband, it says questions to the decision maker, questions to the guardian, caregiver, whatever term you want to put there. So it could be to the teenager, to the parent. And then the 3rd section would be questions for both. Any other questions?
Yeah, where can people find you on social media?
My social media is Responsibly Independent. My website's Responsibly Independent. My email is responsiblyindependent@yahoo.com. And then Instagram and Twitter are also Responsibly Independent, whether that's @ or hashtag. I'm not familiar enough with this to be able to comfortably tell you what my social media platforms are. I know how to use most of them, but I have trouble talking about them. And I guess my other passion is for people who have mental health issues. I'm basically for the underdog, any way, shape, or form. That's a good portion of what I've done my whole life. And I don't know how to wrap this up. What?
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to read some of your messages, and I hope, and if you have any questions about anything with disabilities, go ahead and email them to me. I will get back with you as soon as I can. Thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.